All that language in that section is all state.
I do have a point in 9 days. At the time, we've already gone through all the groups.
It's not for someone who's already gone for all of that. It's from the beginning to the end. It's from the day that it's certified as complete until the last hearing takes place in a decision.
So in its application, the way that we've applied in the way that we traditionally process covers permits in recent years. I think I can think of only one example where we got close to the 90-day window. That was with the state. More times than not, and this is true for pretty much all the land development applications that go through. We do our best to deem the application complete as quickly as possible and put in front of the planning board for review and approval as quickly as possible. And that's just the way that I've conducted my responsibilities over the years. I don't really just sit on applications. Granted, state law gives a little bit more time to municipalities to render a decision because a lot of time, well, I don't want to say a lot of time, applications will evolve during the review process. And sometimes boards and commissions need time to evaluate any changes that are made along the way.
So that made a misunderstanding. I thought it was that a person wanted to do whatever they needed to do, and all the processes and they had 95 additional days to wait. So that was my first. I was not implying that or insinuating that anybody sat on application.
Yeah, it was more along the lines, I think, of some comment, a previous conversation I had with Helen just about the timing of how soon a decision. And then the other while I have the council's attention, the other thing I just want to bring up to you is related to Tom's comment about distribution of completed applications. So again, generally in practice, when I receive an application, usually during the review of determining the application to be complete, at that same time, I'm distributing out the applications to all of the different town departments and partnering agencies while my review is going on. So that within those 14 days of review, all the department has about a 2-week window to review the application, send me written comments, so that when I send my response letter, if there's items that I find to be deficient that need to be responded to, it also includes all the other department comments as well. So the idea being that you kind of get one bite of the apple to get all the comments out there, so that when the applicant responds, all those other previous department comments have been when you deem the application complete, the code, all that code at that point is just saying is if you just send a completed application to council, conservation commission, the partnering fire districts. But in practice here, we're not using that time to revisit the application at that time for any additional comments. So, we give our department heads and our partner agencies 2 weeks of that time initially to get in all your comments before I do the application. So I think I just wanted to help council understand the way that we review our applications, deem them complete, and get them on schedule for public hearing. Hopefully that was something.
There were 2 different sections, so we're just doing the first section now. I'll bring the rest of it.
And could we answer them as we bring them up so that I can prepare the answers in my head?
In other words, any of these changes that you're submitting in the language, deleting whole sections and whatnot, it's all for making it more streamlined for the applicant to get through the process of getting their project up and running.
Well, to answer that,
Sure.
the current version of this chapter has a lot of material in it that is already covered by the land development and subdivision. So it's duplicate. Two sets of duplicate regulations that are developed that we don't follow. What I tried to do when I made these amendments was take out everything that's already covered by the subdivision regulations. So they wouldn't have to look at two different documents when they're trying to figure out what to do. Does that answer your question?
Pretty much.
In other words, there aren't any changes here. You just took out some things that an applicant would have to provide anyway under the subdivision.
How do you think it ever got duplicated like that?
Because there was a change in the state law after the subdivision regulations. The original version of the state law on this on comprehensive permits was a lot more detailed than it used to be.
Are we going to start one? I think we motion to post public hearing provided over the audience. Has anything to say?
We're not done with talking about the points.
Right, so I thought she was going to the second one. If you have more questions on 1830, Hannah, then I'll
The
start.
public,
You can hold the public hearing.
no,
No, well, we don't have the public here, only for 1839.
Excuse me, Mr. President. Solicitor Ellsworth answered that, but Sean was going to say something. I'd like to hear what you had to say.
I was just going to echo what Mr. Elwood.
I'm making a motion to put the hearing on 8. Oh, okay. Any public comment? Sorry. Getting confused. That's right.
There's no audio, there's no video, but audio is working on, so the louder we could speak, the better, but there's
Okay.
unfortunately no video connecting. But
In that case, I make a motion to close the public hearing on chapter 8.
Second,
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, I now make a motion to open the public hearing on chapter 18 of the zoning ordinance regarding dimensional and
you're gonna make a motion to accept the amendments. Close it, now we gotta vote on it.
So, move to approve chapter 18 zoning ordinance regarding low and moderate. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. We're opening public hearing, chapter 18.2, ordinance regarding dimensional supplemental regulations. 1 and 2, 3, B, C, L1, T, B, zoning district. All those in favor? Aye.
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 Okay. Hearing is open.
Okay. This is 18.20.020-10. Which is document that is ledge or rock outcrop within of the surface of that property, that it cannot be considered as part of the minimum lot area.
Excuse me, that's not part of the amendments, I don't think.
Well, it was passed out that pertains to
It's part of the ordinance, but it's not part of the ordinance that's being amended.
the changes that were.
That's already in our ordinance, right?
And there's no.
It's already approved?
It's already on our books.
Other one is 20-050-A. It says limit square footage that can be for business. I understand that the goal was to keep the box stores out of the town. Store. I don't want to make it impossible to be of class or Richmond Common.
That section number.
Yeah, it's 20.050-A.
Oh, that's not being amended either. That's not part of the ordinance that's being amended.
Okay.
Only things that are underlined, I mean, I've never heard you underline this one, it's just kind of a cleanup.
Because I had to see this one. I thought they were all being changed.
No.
No.
No, what's being changed is underlined. That's all that's being changed.
Is there anyone else on the council that has questions regarding this?
Like, what's your idea about the cleanups are on those, please?
Yeah, sure. So, in your agenda packet where you see the underlying sections of the ordinance that are subject to change. So they're intended to primarily, they're primarily intended to add a little bit more clarification to some of our use code categories. You'll see that in some of our dimensional regulation tables where two-family structures are clearly identified. And then, in addition to that, we found a typographic where
Actually, it wasn't, we added a section, but we forgot to change it.
so we there was a cross reference to some of our supplements and information as well. Adopted at the previous time that we went through some periodic updates. So that just clarifies. For the most part, Mike, it's pretty much just routine maintenance.
It's like an oil change.
Right. And what's the most significant one that you can say strikes your fancy, about having cleaned it up?
Which you added, your, 1820-010. There are new dimensional regulations for two-family structures in R3 zones. That wasn't good.
And what will that do? Will that enhance people's ability to do it or less? Enhance their ability to do it. Okay.
There were no regulations on it before. So they couldn't do it because there weren't any regulations for it, but now there are. So yes, we made it easier for people to do it.
Questions from the public? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Okay. On to, we're on to the consent agenda.
Yes, can I please pull 1B? Regular meeting.
Agenda 1A, 2A. Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Okay.
I have 2 comments on 1B.
Yeah.
22, or this one. When I looked at the recommended items and the items, you don't have to suggest specifically put Jeff's name on the agenda, so potential for the potential position. The second one on page 4, about halfway down, somebody who's spoken to Chris Connors. Last name's Kona, K-O-N-K. So a motion to approve minutes with those edits, please.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Awesome. Okay, so now we're in a public forum. So, Anybody would raise their hand who'd like to speak? Sure. Him and tell us your name and where you live.
I'll say, resident of Richmond, 28 years. I just want to address some of the comments that have been made by the council and promises that were made by about reducing taxes by getting more business and everything else. I understand the need for economic development, and I understand that our tax rate is fairly high. And I say fairly because I grew up in the country. I hung around in Foster, Rhode Island. Foster, Rhode Island is a lot higher than here. So if you want to compare tax rates and everything else, you have to compare tax rates of rural versus rural, city versus city. People that moved here don't ever want to see Richmond become a Warwick or a Cranston. That's the reason that we moved here. I moved to get my family out. My wife grew up in Central Falls. I did a small stint there for living in an apartment in the house where she grew up. I couldn't wait to get out because I grew up in Situate, moved there, it's like culture. So I'm retired now, I'm on a fixed income. I'll gladly pay a little more in taxes to live here rather than have a lot of business move into this area. The other thing is with the economic development in the town, one thing that needs to be considered is if any businesses, the Charitable Plaza, or we expand that, and there's a lot of business with a lot more traffic, you also have to take in that the town is going to have to pay, or the state, or I don't know how they work that, for the infrastructure to be helped out. Because anybody that goes into the center of town on a Saturday or Sunday, try to get out of those parking lots without crossing the yellow line. You're curb jumping or whatever. So the roads are going to have to be widened. There's a whole lot that has to come into this. I just want to make sure that the council takes that into consideration as well as the Economic Development Corporation. Thanks.
Anyone else?
Mark, I do have one via Zoom.
Okay. Can we hear them? Okay. Go ahead.
Can you hear me? Lauren Cashula, 26 Old Richmond Townhouse Road. I'm just looking for any updates of the 4 Richmond Townhouse Road development to see if there's any, back in April of last year, we got the money for the grant, and back in October, we were in the HUD process. So I'm just seeing if there's any updates or anything. I know that we are in desperate need of playgrounds, and it was a venture I had put in place. So I'm just seeing if, we as a community, we could get an update of what's going on. I've contacted members of council. I have not heard anything, which is concerning because this is a grant that we got and we had a timeline for this. So I am concerned that it's not going to move forward. And if it is, we need to have an update for that. Thank you.
Did you contact me?
I've contacted members of council,
Okay.
but I as a public forum, I can't comment.
I'll say it was me. I thought I responded to your most recent email. I apologize if I didn't.
I mean, if I don't hear from you, I can't respond.
All right. Well, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Would you like me to address that?
Yes, please.
Lauren, thank you. As people in the audience may or may not know, we received a grant from Congressman Lansman's office for $578,000 to improve the lot across the street, which would include a playground, a pavilion that has a bathroom facility, a basketball court, and all the associated utilities that would go with it. Dawn and I have worked together on this. There are a lot of hoops to jump through before we can even start to do anything. And we can't do anything that's going to cost us money if we're looking to get reimbursed for it. So we're kind of stuck right now because we've been told We need to do an environmental assessment. However, Sean and I have both reached out to our contact person and not gotten any response whatsoever about what level of environmental assessment, if any, needs to be done. So I finally did reach out to Congressman Magaziner's office, since Congressman Langevin is no longer around, to say, could you help us to facilitate an answer? But we actually do have a webinar tomorrow, and we'll try to get some answers. There is a timeline, but we're not in danger of losing the money, which we're not even close. I think it's at 1 o'clock.
Available to the public to convert them up. That's it.
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
So the environmental study, whatnot that you gotta do on that lot across the street, is that more because it's a municipality that's gonna be developing it, or there are different regs, if a private entity went in and did that?
It's because it's a federal grant that's always require some level of environmental assessment.
That's where the sticky point is. You get money from them, but then, you know, they make you work for it.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah. Yep.
Is there anyone else in Cyberland or in the room that would like to comment about anything in public forum? Otherwise, I have one item to discuss. Everyone, if you haven't, oh, okay.
Quick comment. My name is Gary Stoner. I'm a resident of Richmond for 30 years. And it's an observation that I'm concerned about the actions of the town council since it's been installed recently and the effect on employees of the town.
That's on the agenda. Okay. We're not supposed to talk about forums that you don't have where it comes out.
I can do that.
It's a little interactive.
Okay, yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Sure. Well, since this council has been installed, I've seen some things that I believe are not in terms of keeping with best practice of running organizations, ignoring recommendations of trusted, longstanding employees of the town, dismissing members of planning or dismissing members of volunteer boards who have served for 20 years or so. And I would urge you, as you move forward in what I would call the proverbial bull in the china shop fashion, to keep the pulse of the town workers and the town volunteers who serve on these committees and commissions in mind, and talk to them and understand how your actions are affecting their thinking about staying here and working here over time, and what your effect is. They're going to be here for a long time. And I'm not sure that you are, but I think you really need to pay attention to the effects of your actions on people who are working here and employed here.
Thank you. Is there anyone else? Okay, so your ambulance membership cards have either arrived or are about to arrive. And our ambulance corps in town needs people to join. They're a huge asset to the town. We had to pay town employed ambulance corps, we would be in very deep financial stuff. It's like if we had to pay for a fire department. So I'm just trying to encourage everyone to join the ambulance corps. Costs less than $100. It basically gives you and your family no cost ambulance in the area that they cover. So with that, I'm almost we have we'll move on to reports and municipal resilience program by Kimberly Korea that stormwater and resilience analyst for Rhode Island Infrastructure Bank.
We do have I apologize. The presentation, this part of the video is working. I do apologize. So behind me.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you, council members, for having me today. My name is Kimberly Corey, and yes, my last name is a little bit tricky. Stormwater and Resilience Analyst at Rhode Island Infrastructure Bank. I'm generally joined by Sue Anderblock from the Nature Conservancy. She couldn't make it here tonight, but I'm going to be talking to you a little bit about our resilience efforts at Rhode Island Infrastructure Bank and at the Nature Conservancy, specifically our municipal resilience program, which Richmond has joined and has begun participating in. And we just want to update you a little bit on what's the work that's been conducted to date and some of the work that we do. So that's the
Okay.
So for a little bit of an overview, and we can make sure, I'm sure the slides are circulated as well afterwards, but the Municipal Resilience Program through the Infrastructure Bank and TNC is really focused on supporting local cities and towns to identify strengths, vulnerabilities, and resilience actions in the face of climate-driven hazards and also natural-based hazards. Essentially, communities, as you likely know, join the program. They complete a workshop component identifying some of their key hazards, priority actions, and the follow-up is some action grants to be able to get some of these priority actions done. Jump to the next slide here. This is a little bit of an overview of what I just described. There's kind of three key pieces to the program. The first being the workshop, where we're working town-wide to identify those community hazards, the strengths, those priority actions. And the Nature Conservancy puts together a summary findings report that details the outcomes of that workshop, which Richmond has been offered at this point. I'll be talking a little bit more on that shortly. The action grants, which are upcoming, funds design, engineering, and construction of priority projects. And the ongoing pipeline component of the program helps to match cities and towns who are participating with other funding and financing sources to get their projects done. So the program really started with resilient roadies, and this was a plan that was issued by Governor Pino Raimondo in 2017 to Colorado Rhode Island Infrastructure Bank to develop a actionable climate resilience strategy for the state. And the bank hired on a chief resilience officer and went ahead and developed this, leveraging a lot of the existing climate resilience work that had been done across the state, and working together with a lot of local and state level partners to develop 61 key statewide actions. So it's locally. And as a part of this report, in addition to a lot of these actions, there were 6 key manifestations of climate change that were identified. And generally at the beginning of our workshop, I'll run through some of these, but you can see the picture where sea level rise, warming air temperatures and water temperatures, storm frequency and intensity, changing biodiversity, and precipitation and flooding. If I want to jump ahead, we're starting to really see a lot of these in actions. Temperatures have increased more than 3 degrees in the past years, with actually 2020 coming forward as the warmest year on record most recently. Over the past 50 years, we've also seen sharp increases in surface water temperatures, even more so than those land water temperatures, going up to higher of 3 degrees right there. We're also seeing more intense rainfall events, higher levels of sea level rise projections. In New England, we've seen about 71% increase in these intense rainfall events since 1958. In terms of sea level rise, we're seeing projections from NOAA that are closer to 1 foot in the next 10 years, closer to 9 feet in the 2100. So quite a lot to think about there. So in response to all of this, and in response to resilient roading, the municipal resilience program was developed, and some key parts of that were helping municipalities to identify how much it is that they need to spend to get some of this work done, as well as what is the work that needs to be done. That's where these workshop components come in, and then follow-up action grant funds to get work moving forward. You want to jump ahead? Richmond is well along in the process. Richmond, as you know, has applied. They've developed a resilience core team. We've completed an emergency workshop. really good attendance, and I'll get to that shortly here. The workshop has been posted, and we're currently in that post-workshop stage where the infrastructure bank has been following up, teasing through some of the outcomes that came from the workshop, and delving into what could be funded by these MRP action grants ahead of the RFP that will be coming out for these grants in the coming months. And we had wide participation from Richmond, so thank you to everyone who turned up and participated in this. We really, and I know the Nature Conservancy strives for this workshop experience to be focused on Richmond, really driven by local expertise. So it's always really exciting to see it turn out. And there is, as it was set up, participation from the administrator, emergency management, fire, police, everything down to the school districts, the land trust. I know the Southern Rhode Island Conservation District, and who's here today, has been a huge partner in this process for the town. So thank you to everyone who turned out for this event. And going into some of the strengths that came out of this workshop, you see a number of them listed here are kind of directly in relation to this turnout. Things that were cited were very responsive and committed as leadership, municipal staff, engaged residents as well. Just really excited to see a lot of folks coming together on these initiatives. And another big thing that was noted was the large percentage of protected lands, EMA efforts in the town, as well as the stormwater management regulations. And of course, there were some challenges noted as well as this part of this workshop process. You can see a number of them listed up here, but they are mainly in regards to flooding, particularly inland flooding was mentioned significantly, soil erosion as well, both property damage and utility outages from storm events. There was a lot mentioned on elevated heat, increased numbers of dead trees on the roadways, and both the connections to invasive species there, but also the connections to trees falling and such during storm events, as well as these general needs for more holistic cross-agencies to how can we collaborate more. And there were some top priority themes that leaked out across the town. You can see kind of some of the key ones listed here across all of the actions. We saw key focuses on emergency management, quality of life. What do we want these roads to look like going forward? Also, kind of your long-term vision for the town. Where do you want the roads to be? And of course, the prioritization of infrastructure. And some of the key priority actions, this is by far, there's a broader list here of work, of course, that needs to be done, but some of the things that were really prioritized by the participants, these actions ranged from planning solutions to design and construction solutions, but you can see more on the planning side. What are the implications of potential population growth on what our community looks like? How do we get some of these more inter and intra-governmental partnerships going in order to going into the construction side of things, we see some of the work on Valley Walsh Drive. We need to minimize the impact of the buildings on the trees I was talking about earlier, and those impacts of the electric grids and the storm events. Tying in with this theme of trees, there's also talk on the townwide forest inventory, as well as focus on implementing the Beaver River assessment and stewardship plan as well. And finally, one of the last things that was mentioned was key drought management techniques, able to capture those townwide. How do we steward those and move some of them? And I will leave us here. Really, this is the next steps for Richmond in the program. So as I mentioned, Richmond's currently in the process of doing that post-MRP workshop follow-up. How we dig in, see what potential actions are most eligible for which funding sources, what can we fund through the MRP action grants. And all of this is kind of preparing Richmond ahead of the MRP action grant release. We're targeting on or around May 1st for that RFP release, so we're well on time there. And then we're going to be able to move forward with getting some projects funded and hopefully supporting Richmond and going forward and getting some good work done.
Can you ask a few questions?
Oh, yeah.
Obviously, you work with other towns too.
Yes.
Okay. Looking at Richmond, how many acres encompasses Richmond?
Okay. I don't know if,
It's about 24,000 acres. Do you know how much is put in conservancy? That includes, open space, state lands, cemeteries, ball fields and stuff like that, golf courses. Total acres are already put aside in that type of conservancy.
I'll say I don't know the exact numbers, but I have heard from the workshop, it's quite a lot.
Sean, do you know the acreage that's put aside?
Roughly, I mean, it's like close to 25% of the town. It's like that equates to like 13,000 acres between federal, state, nonprofit land, things of that nature.
Hey, look at Richmond, we got 24,000 total acres in Richmond. And depending on how you calculate some of these lands, open space and whatnot, it's really anywhere between 14,000 to 16,000 acres in Richmond that's already been put aside. So in terms of like development for like homes and businesses and stuff like that, right now, if we stop putting away any more land, that only leaves us 8,000 acres to develop for homes, businesses and whatnot. So somebody asked me that before, one of the conservation groups. I asked them and I told them about how many acres we had put aside in conservancy. And I said, how many more acres do you think would be feasible for Richmond to put aside? So I'm asking you that question, knowing that there's about 14 to 16,000 acres out of 24. How many more acres do you think we need to put aside in the town of Richmond?
Can I take a couple comments about this? So I think there might be a slight misunderstanding about what the intent, I think, of what the MRP process was intended to do. Going through this program and getting the town's certification completed, which we did in fall of last year, allows the town to apply for an action grant round that's intended to help offset the effects of climate change and flood resiliency. It's not, I think Mike, maybe you might feel that there's money out there for land acquisition. That's really not what the intent of the MRP.
Oh, no, don't misunderstand. It looks like Richmond is already doing, my point is, it looks like Richmond is already doing a pretty damn good job, all right, of countering a lot of the things that you went through. When you look at the total acreage in Richmond to the total acreage of land that's already been set aside,
This isn't what this is all about. This is about climate change, flooding, projects to take down trees.
Yeah, the grants are pretty wide ranging in what they can cover. It's one, I know I highlighted, land preservation as a category on here.
The land acquisition.
Yeah. And honestly, with Richmond, from the workshop attendees, it was mentioned mainly as a strength of this town. This is something we've already done, big checkpoints, and I think, with the MRP action plans, we're looking broader. We're looking to, if we've got stormwater running off our roadways, how do we immediately deal with that? Or, we've got this pump station we need to elevate, or, things along these lines. And I think there's a lot of things that fall into that category, but it's there for whatever Richmond would like to use it for.
I know over the years, when I think trees that were damaged by the gypsy moths and so on. Trees is in excess of what the town's able to afford. So a grant like this would allow us to take care of those trees, for example. Am I correct?
Yeah, so essentially, like anything that has to do with some of these invasive species that are in some ways they're being driven into these areas of climate change, right? And that's something that this can help to address. And there are certain eligibilities to the MRP action plan. So that's a lot of the conversations we have this follow-up workshops that making sure it falls within those eligibilities. And we look at projects that are design, engineering, construction, and these sorts of things. But there's potential if there are damaged trees to put this out and what that site is to be more effective.
That slide you have flooded transformer station, that was a real mess.
So things like underground wiring maybe could be things you could have a grant for, because even if we had bad trees, underground.
Absolutely, absolutely. And that's actually something that a lot of municipalities have taken strong interest in is can we, underground or electrolyze. That's something the MRP action grants do. The action grants earlier on in the program, we had maybe $1 million or $5 million. So the projects were smaller. Now we've been able to get some more funding under our belt. We're looking at 16 million in funding at this point. So we're able to help municipalities with larger projects, but ultimately it's in the municipalities for what you'd like to. And there's a line for still.
We should get electric people to cut the trees back, not just like a little tiny hole for the wire, but cut it. If you go over into Connecticut, it's a clear path under those wires. And in Rhode Island, we have the wires with trees wrapped around them and everything else. And but I don't think that's anything to do with this grant.
There's potential with some of the, especially with some of the enzyme trees and removing that as a hazard. There's some potential. But, I'm absolutely here as a resource and happy to continue the conversations on what projects are.
Do you have a list of these?
Yeah, we do. And actually, those are what I think what was sort of refreshing that came out of the MRP process was that it underscored a lot of the infrastructural needs I think that we do have in town related to stormwater mitigation. So, I'm sure, Scott's not here tonight, but, he and I have talked about some of the culvert upgrades that are probably overdue. Stormwater retention basins in certain areas of the town where we know that flooding is a problem. And going through this process, allows the town to apply for those action grant rounds to secure that money to help put those projects into place. So I think what would be helpful, I think, for the town long term, I think would be to start programming those types of projects into our CIP year after year. So you have a list that is programmed in year after year. You're building a match towards cost sharing the grant rounds that Yep.
One more question. Once we get, someone has an action item, determine this is what we're going to do. What's the what that money like is there and such and such?
Yeah, it's a great question. So typically for our projects, we target a 2-year timeframe. We have had some ability to do extension. We do target those projects that are ready to go. And if it's a larger project, we say, okay, maybe you want to come in for a design and engineering with only proposal, and then when you're done with that, you come back a couple of years later with a construction proposal. And that is the nice thing with the MRP. Once you've joined the program, you've gone through the workshop process, we have some update processes, just make sure our information is going, but you're eligible at this point for all of it.
One last question for you. You talk about like climate change and whatnot. What is the board's idea of, so like there's an open parking lot already, or there's already been a clear, something like that. But if somebody's proposing like a new solar field and they want to clear cut 30 acres, 20 acres, how does your committee view that as now all of a sudden the vegetation's gone and you talk about flooding and whatnot? Now we all know that you take away trees and all the vegetation, where does the water go? Now it just flows off and there's nothing to absorb the water. So we want to save the environment on one end, but on the other end, we're clear cutting just off 95, 50, 40, 80 acres. Now, where does all that water go? And we're talking about flooding and whatnot. So what stance does your organization take in terms of like these large solar fields that are cutting all the trees, all the shrubs, all the homes for the little birds and the chipmunks and stuff like that? How do you address that?
Yeah, I can say that I can't speak to the broader review committee for the can't even necessarily say I would speak for the bank as a whole, but I will say that I definitely recommend this. I'll say through the action grant process, we haven't, I think honestly, we haven't had the funds available until this round of people to even consider solar projects coming in. And a lot of the solar projects that do consider for those grants are returning solar plus battery backups. So say if you want your local library to be used as an emergency shelter, can you set up a solar system on the top of that building, have an emergency battery backup system that people can go into that structure and be able to talking about it. I will say that, I mean, it does seem that given that we want to reduce flooding through this grants and through this program, I feel like funding that would be at odds with what the
Thanks.
Our original solar project down the road at the farm there, at any kind of ordinances regarding solar, and we have no buffers that change the water tables, basements. So, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
For our next,
I just let someone who's listening virtually ask if you guys can put your mics closer.
This was last time.
I apologize, I couldn't be heard. I actually tend to talk loud usually, so. Our next guest is John Fontana, the project manager for the Rhode Island DOT. And he's invited to come up to the podium and discuss the roundabout project.
Good evening. My name is actually Dave Capello, John Fontana. Questions I may have, but I'll do a quick overview. I live in the town of South Kingstown. Again, around Farmington. I'm here twice last year. I believe it was give you an update in terms of the status of the project, design, everything, and now I'm just kind of here. We need open bids. The contractor received was proceeding. People were disabled. It's kind of
Who is the contract?
contract is Carbon Corporation. So just looking at their schedule, what they broken into four phases. The first phase, begins this spring and kind of goes into the summer. That is the water line work that the town asked to take back on the project. In addition to some also overhead utility new work that will be and as well.
Is there a way that we can get a copy of this?
If you want to see it, I can email it right now and send it towards the end of the day today,
Yeah,
so we
okay.
can get, if you want to follow along, I'll email it to you right now.
Yeah.
A little longer, please.
Sure, no problem. So after phase one being done this spring into summer, phase two begins the actual roundabout work. Generally speaking, it's going to be the center island of the roundabout that will be constructed this year. That will then lead us into winter shutdown. The two-season construction project, 2023 and 2024. Work will begin again in the spring of 24. That will be actually the roundabout, the majority of the roundabout work itself. And that gets into the sidewalk work as well. And then later in the summer into the fall, the roundabout itself will be constructed and finished, including all sidewalks. The final, milling and paving of the pavement, installation of the signs, striping, and also, I guess, the final resurfacing of Richmond Townhouse Road. That will become a one-way road.
That's the. Right, I'll wait.
So one of the things we just want to bring to everyone's attention, obviously, there's going to be a lot of construction operation going on. So, obviously, our coordination will be through Aaron's office in terms of notifying towns and what lane closures, any type of employee of the contractor working that. And obviously we'll be putting in school as well. So, across the street. Again, initial work, typical details, including, shoulder closures, the lane shifts, and also some temporary detours. So, and that's what we'll be in spring. Major construction activities. So if you look at generally during the day is what the contractors look at, 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. They'll be out there working. There's some night work that's allowed. They have not yet indicated to us on their schedule if they night work. But we do expect that as we move forward into construction, obviously, working and also obviously the department for officers present. But there's some setups we'll kind of go through in the next slides. Sorry, I'll try to speak a little clearer then. Just the notes at the bottom of the slide there. So Washington County Fair, I know that was a concern the town council had last year when I presented. So there's language in our contract. Contract is not allowed to work from Wednesday, August 16th through Sunday, August 20th of this year. And then based on what the dates are on the website now for 2024 and Wednesday through Sunday, August. Next slide. So these slides just kind of give a general idea of the and this first phase that again, this is kind of talking the spring and summer of this year. In addition to the relocations, the contractor will be widening the roadway pavement area. That's kind of the hatched area to allow some of the next phase of construction operations. That's why the widening will be occurring. Go to the next slide. So this is the work that would begin again late summer into the fall of this year. The center island, so stamp colored asphalt is what that island is. That will be constructed and installed. The approaches to the roundabout, all 4 locations, do have some barrels that will be shown there to act as what the roundabout will be when it's constructed, but it will not be striped accordingly. There will not be any curved islands there yet. Again, it's going to these 2.
Confidence of Alan when it's done.
I don't know offhand, but if we can kind of get to that question a little later.
Okay. Yeah.
The consultant's actually on board, and we can certainly ask them to answer that question after the presentation. Next slide. So phase 3 now, again, this is going to be spring and summer of 2024. It's when they'll be doing all of that island work that you see for the approaches, and also starting to install the curbing along the radius of the area that they widened with the paving initially. And the last slide. This phase 4 is pretty much the finished product. All sidewalk will be installed. The final paving of the area itself, all approaches, and then final signage, etc. Next slide is kind of the final slide that shows you the finished product of all the signage striping that will be installed. And I guess question-wise, I don't know if we can pull up a consultant to maybe answer that. Brad Leach, are you available to answer the question about the?
He's on the phone.
Yep. The circumference of the island.
Yeah, I missed the question. The audio is a little bit choppy. Can you repeat the question?
Could you tell me what size the circumference of the central island is going to be when it's complete? The diameter and circumference.
The diameter, I want to say it's 110 feet, but I don't have the plan in front of me. But if I recall, it's 110 feet. John, I have a colleague on also. I'm not sure if he can hear. Dave, can you pull the plan up again?
Yeah.
Can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Okay, I'm trying to look at the plan right now. I believe it's 130 feet. I got to double check. Just give me a second.
It's
Okay, wait.
Another
Are you-
question, Bubby. I had a concern. My concern was the westbound traffic on 138 coming down that hill. 110-foot long semi-tractor trailer filled with 40 tons of stuff. Or a cement mixer coming back to the gravel pit. That kind of momentum and inertia and the speed that those trucks go down that hill, there's going to be a catastrophic mess there if something goes wrong. Is there any kind of plan to reduce speed coming into that area?
There is advanced signage. It's maybe not showing this, but it's kind of a cut and match on the side of the kind of the screen that's up there. But advanced signage, we're finding, motorists of an upcoming roundabout, reduced speed. I believe it's 20 miles an hour for reduced speed.
And then,
in addition, Dave, it is designed so that we take traffic to the right, back to the left, and then right to try to slow them down, kind of a chicane type action. So it's not a straight shot into the roundabout.
There's also a flashing yellow sign. We put up a flashing yellow sign westbound.
the other concern I have, the last concern is those trucks going down that hill, you're going to hammer on the Jake brake. And the people who live on that hill, going up the hill on both sides, are just going to hear a machine gun rat-a-tat of the Jake brake going down that hill all night long. I live on Route 138 further down, and that's all I hear all night long. The whole house shakes, and the truck trying to slow down because it's going way too fast. I'm just concerned about, we've had a number of accidents at the intersection out there. And so those are my concerns.
Do you think that this is something like thinking outside the box here? But when you look at where the positioning of the town hall is, it's like a little triangle, engineered wise, do you think it would have been, I mean, when you look at the amount of land here that kind of breaks things up, engineering wise, do you think it would have been, I mean, in the long run, try and relocate and utilize this land so you're not actually trying to engineer around something that shouldn't be here because of the...
I'm going to kind of defer to the consultant for a moment, but there's a skew as you approach the intersection. Like right now, you come down the hill or go up the hill, east or westbound. You're going in a straight line pretty much. But as you approach this roundabout, you're off center and then have to skew back around to slow you down. That's what a roundabout is versus a rotary. And John or Brad, if you guys can kind of chime in on the engineering that.
Yeah, unfortunately, I'm a little bit lost because I'm not sure what corner you were kind of pointing to. Or
Can you see
working
me?
on Zoom.
Think yourself coming down the hill, so going westbound. Currently, motorists go straight through the intersection, but the skew that you have designed for this will again meant to slow vehicles down.
Yep.
And not allow speed through. So that was kind of the discussion. If you can kind of elaborate on that a little bit.
Yeah, if you want to. So as you come over the hill, rather than coming straight into the roundabout, first you're going to have to bear slightly to your right, and we're actually going to have to excavate into that hill a little bit, and then you'll turn left back towards the roundabout, a little bit tighter radius, and then you'll turn back right into the corner that you see that just, no, you're going too far, Dave. We still haven't even hit the roundabout yet.
Brad, I'm wondering if someone let me share my plans. I have the actual signing and striping plans up. Is that something we can do?
Mike, was your
Actually,
question
Mike,
more about
yeah.
whether the town hall should have
It would-
taken
right.
down
would it have been easier for the engineering and making it more efficient to finally get this area fixed and actually, you know what I mean, done right, to say, hey, guys, we'll buy you out. Could you please, we're gonna take the town hall property to make this work the way it should, instead of trying to engineer around an issue that is actually, as far as I'm concerned, part of the problem. Would it have been better for you, engineered wise, to say, let's get rid of the town hall and let's really do this area the way it should be done and move the town hall maybe across the street? We're just thinking outside the box, guys,
Understood. So again, so there's a safety study that was done about. There are design manuals through Federal Highway, through AASHTO, American Association of State Highway Transportation, right, that go into guidance on how to design the roundabouts. Again, I don't want to speak for the consultant, but Brad, if you want to chime in, I mean, you guys were able to design, an efficient, safe roundabout based on the right of way that's available in the state land, correct? This wasn't where we looked at an option and said,
we actually did acquire some property for this, and you don't want these roundabouts too large. We don't want these big, massive rotaries like we had in the past. Roundabouts are meant to be compact. So we're slowing traffic down through the intersection with the compact roundabout. So John, go back there and explain how this works.
All right, so on the screen right now, you're looking at the east side of the roundabout up the hill. And you can see my cursor right now, this is westbound. So the first thing that someone's going to see before they reach the crest of the hill is this flashing warning assembly sign. Okay, so that's your first indication that you're coming up on a roundabout. As you come up down across the hill, you're going to start seeing the median island and these signs. And what we've done is we've cut into the embankment over here. Obviously on this plane, you can't see all the trees, but we're basically cutting a few feet over here so that we could widen the roadway out to the right. That'll help us move traffic over to the right so that we can bring them back left. And this is where we reduce their speed. This is where we help slow them down. So once they've slowed down, then they come into this approach and they get this other curve, and then their entry speed into the roundabout should be controlled at this point. And then they're allowed to make their maneuver through the roundabout going on their way. And that's it. But we did cut into this whole area here for sidewalk, for the roadway. And then I'll go back, into this embankment here. I think everything from roughly here over is new. I don't know if you can see the existing edge line here. I don't know, it might be hard to see on the plan. Right there is about the edge of the existing road, and everything above that is new. We're pushing into new fill, or existing fill, sorry. There's a new road and existing cross section, the embankment.
And then coming down out of the rotary, the school doesn't lose any land on the school side, correct? Or do you take a little bit on that side too?
We actually widened in there a little bit so that the vehicles had a place to line up at the end of the day. We went out there and watched what goes on at the end of the day with people picking up students. We were out there with the principal and the police chief, a couple other folks. So we provided a little extra room. Make sure there's some room for people to pull off in the shoulder area. But we didn't take any property from the school.
Chief, did you have a?
I am not a roundabout salesperson. I don't make any money for pitching. I'm about public safety. And I can tell you, our patrols are finding people going 78 miles an hour on 138. Whenever you improve the surface and you widen it, the houses are set back. There's a sense of anonymity when people are driving and they drive what they feel comfortable for speed and being able to do it. That position there is similar to Summit Rotary in Coventry. We've got two very steep downhill grades approaching a four-way intersection. I've sat and watched that, and it actually has improved public safety. It's improved traffic flow. There's another one in near the Quonset shops over there. People are coming off of 403 at speed, and they are negotiating that without problem. This forces people into a better traffic pattern. Think about this, the most dangerous collision angle is side impact, especially with vehicles that are doing speeds of 50, 60 miles an hour, approaching a school zone. I mean, to me, this is the best option that we had based on what available to us. And it also, you know, we're gonna end traffic pulling out. Now you got three lanes of traffic within 300 feet of one another, all entering the road at the same point or within that same general area. Some are turning right, others are turning left. It is absolutely chaotic. This is going to allow traffic to travel onto 112 South. If anybody trying to access 138, this is Carolina Newsnet, has to go to the roundabout. You know, I think people will be waiting left on those two roads because we're taking a chance whenever they get to that intersection. When do I make my go? Because I got people pulling out of the town parking lot. I got cars coming around that bend. It's a very wide sweeping corner over here. That's challenging too. When you have traffic coming at you from different angles. I really believe this is going to improve traffic safety in the area. But I would encourage you to go to those areas and look at what those roundabouts do for traffic volumes that may be similar at different times of day. I can tell you the planning sessions we had were excellent. There was feedback from everybody. Everything that you're concerned about, we actually vetted out there. The signage in advance of that hill is key because it's a change from normal traffic. Right. So drivers that are coming through there once every 3 months or 4 months, and all of a sudden this thing goes into play, maybe they're not familiar with it. But when they see that flash of light with the roundabout image, they know they have to slow before they cross the hill. Thank you.
Since it's a state road, millions of miles, you're actually able to put new lines up, are you not? Found that you're able to enforce that?
I'm not familiar with that. Something I guess we should.
Because I've seen them, but you know, I would think that truckers know that they come into something. Questions. But also, because it's going to affect everybody here also.
That's just signage. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, it's a sign. Many places.
Yeah, that's something we can look at. I'm not familiar with that.
Yep.
I've seen it. I too drive all over New York in other towns. But I haven't seen it much here. I live right on Route 1, and I feel that the speed from the crest of that hill to the highway is getting grossly excessive. What should be especially about always it's going to make the when you have glare ice on the road and trucks blasting down the road, maybe doesn't know where to take this route. It just, I don't know. I know that a whole bunch of smarter minds and more professional highway engineers have looked at this prior to me making my comments, but I still feel that the posted speed limit is fast.
That's, it's going to be loaded.
It's because as you approach the
Well, for example, it's 45 up there and 40 in front of my house. And 40 means 50 to most people.
Doesn't it?
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Some people still can't hear. The councilman is saying not be heard when he's speaking, in that corner.
You got that piece out over there too? You.
It's not, guys, it's not, the system isn't recognizing, so it's coming all through my laptop. So I'm gonna try and adjust now that we're done screen sharing to move the microphone, but Unfortunately, it's totally not recognizing our sound system, so it's not council's microphones.
So I mentioned earlier that, items G3 and G4 are not on for tonight. So we move to town administrator. And that's right. She's here too. Broken are been on foot and all. So I won't ask you to stand at the podium, but I'll ask you to yell.
I'll move up a little bit. Thank you for having me. There are three things that I really wanted to talk to the council about tonight. It's busing, housing, and school funding. In no particular order. Let's start with busing. So I want to thank Karen Pinch for coming on a Zoom with RIPTA. As many of you know, busing is an issue that I think is really important to our rural communities. There's a lack of transportation here. RIPTA has a very difficult time spending their federally matched rural dollars. So there's an opportunity to for the town to buy a van through RIPTA. These vans are about $100,000. RIPTA will cover 80% of that, so that would cost the town about $20,000. I thought it was a good opportunity with bringing on the social services department. That might be something, something to consider. I connected RIPTA with Wood River Health. They're also going to be purchasing a van using the rural federally matched dollars, which is, I think, really great. So that folks who go to doctors can now have more access to get to the doctor. So something for the council to consider. The housing bills. I think I wrote you all an email. I heard back from some. When the 14 housing bills were presented, those have been heard in committee. I really urge and I invite you on April 11th at 7 p.m. I'm having a Zoom with the low moderate income commission chair, which is June Speakman, and the executive director of one of the Rhode Island housing departments. They're going to explain the housing bills, and this will be an opportunity for everyone to use their voice. There's a few that may have negative impacts on a rural community. So this will be a good opportunity to say, hey, this works for us, but this doesn't work for us. So we need to have that conversation. We need to have it with folks that can change the bills. So it's not too late for a sub-A to come in. It's not too late to have a little bit of impact on how that plays out. So I really encourage all of you to join the Zoom. If you go on my Facebook, I'll actually send you an email with a link to.
That'd be great.
It's really important. I'll be sending it to the planning board also. Karen and whoever else, share it widely. It's open to public. It's just a Zoom. Anybody's welcome if they're curious about the housing bills and how it's going to impact us.
Do you happen to have the number of the whole number that would affect us possibly negatively?
11 of them. I can send them
to.
I think that there's three, personally, I think there's three that are more really fast tracking land use issues. I'll give you the bill numbers that I think, H6090, H6082, one more, H6059, H6061. And so those are like fast tracking land changes. So that's really going to be something that, we're going to need to know and understand how that impacts us and what can be modified to that will we can live with. Because these bills are going to go through, regardless of whether or not I vote for them or not, they're going to happen. So this is an opportunity for everybody to come together and use our collective voice and talk to these folks about it.
These bills are probably going to include a bunch of unfunded mandates, I assume. Yeah.
Well, there's, updating the comprehensive plan every 10 years. The state's not going to, pay for that. There's a couple other mandates that will probably be included in that. I believe that it's advised to update the comprehensive plan every 10 to 15 years now. For 10 years? Okay, there was something about the land use, the comprehensive plan, and I don't.
Nine application based on it if it's not.
Yeah.
If it's not.
Things that we can sort out and understand. June Speakman, she, like I said, she chaired the Low to Moderate Income Commission, and she's really one of the leaders on this. So it will be good to have the conversation with her. Busing, housing. Public education funding. I have two bills in. Obviously, you know, everybody knows that there are people who don't want to fund education. There are folks that do want to fund education. These two bills would really substantially help. It would be great to see some support behind them. Funding, categorical transportation aid. This is what the school committee wants. This is what will really help our town to rely on. They don't have to say a Hail Mary every time the budget comes out. It would help them. Written testimony is really important. I think it's really, really important that we have our collective voice heard at the State House. As many people as possible write written testimony, come and testify. The only way we get our voices heard is if we make some noise with these. So testifying is super, super important. And then the other bill is a 6% increase to our regional schools to incentivize other school districts to regionalize. We're the smallest state with a ton of districts. It doesn't quite make sense. We've seen that regional districts can work. It can work well. All our regional school districts are in the top schools in the state. So it's really, really important. I really urge you to come and testify and really learn more about some of these bills. And then the other thing, you know, I know that there's talk about a tri-town coalition. As the state rep for this town, I have not been contacted by anyone for the tri-town coalition. And I want to work collaboratively. Me being here tonight shows you that I want to work with you. I've had ADU events, I've had other events, I've invited everyone to come. It's really important that we have these conversations. If you want things to happen at the State House, I'm a phone call away. I'm very accessible. I answer emails. You can ask anybody who's called me. I think it's important that we have open conversation. I'm available. I think before we start making steps to, you know, have discussions internally, we include everyone in the picture. I have my business card that I drop some off with my phone number, my email address, all of the ways my home address is on it. Please don't show up without calling first.
Did send a resolution in support of the 6% not too long ago. Oh, we sent it to all the regional districts, all the senators, everybody. Thank you for coming by.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you.
Megan, just one thing, we were in discussion with the three towns on the tri-town coalition, and it was just basically just looking at it, starting off discussion, you know, getting some feelers out there to see what people's you know, interest was in it. And I'm sure, you know, that's how things always happen. You know, it starts with like a grassroots, somebody comes up, you come up with an idea for a bill. All right, you know, you talk to your people, and then it goes from there once things start to progress forward. So we were doing basically the same thing too. You know, we're getting like a consensus between the three towns and whatnot. And, you know, you were there at the omnibus meeting, and, you know, it was our intention to, you know, hook up with you guys, you know, yourself, you know, other state senators, you know, Morgan and whatnot. And then, you know, we go from there. But like you said, the more voices that are heard, that we go down there, we testify in our capacity as council people and whatnot, holds a little more weight, I'm sure, you know, when we come down, school committee members and whatnot, elected officials. So yeah, that was our intent, to hook up with you guys, because you write the bills and you present them.
Right. like, bills that are heard. Quite often, there's too many people. I mean, I'd like to see these regional bills. I'd like to see, so many people there that they have to be asked to go into an overflow room. And that's the way that we make change and we get some funding for our schools. We have people turn out, we have them show up. And that's how we keep it forward. Also, I'd love to see you support my protecting our forest down, which we're talking about in our clear cutting. So I'll send you that bill number as well.
Thank you for your diligence.
Thank you.
Seriously. Okay. So our next item is town administrator report. Karen, thanks.
Thank you. I'll try to be quick because the meeting is along the agenda. 3 quick things. The first is the hire of Susan Hawkins for building planning and zoning clerk. We had members of our building official and our zoning official do interview several candidates. We found Susan to be very well qualified, a great fit for the position. She's got really good experience and she lives nearby in Hope Valley.
Motion to the hiring of Susan Hawkins as the full-time building planning and zoning clerk.
I second. All those in favor? Or you have any discussion, and if barring any discussion, all those you say aye?
So, yeah, good discussion. How many applicants were there? Because again, I didn't get any information on applicants.
I don't know the number off the top of my head.
6 or 7 applicants, we interviewed 6. I think I was that number.
Okay, well, in the future, you said that you were going to make sure that these were given to the council people or the applications.
Yeah, I think the council needs to look at.
We did not agree on
If the council as a whole wants to ask for that, that's great.
I feel it's only important typically at like a director level or something like that. And so I don't feel that we need to interview. That's my.
So I got a feeling issue is do not want to just be a rubber stamp. So
well, I don't think that we're really stamping. We're giving the people again who work with employed the ability to see if they met with the employees. So it's not our job to see if we like them, but they don't work well with the town employees, then it's
a question of whether.
But it's not our position going through putting it out as a public document and then giving the authority to the town administrator to administer interviews with the people that they are going to be working with. That's the point.
Department head, then.
It's not. This is not a department head.
No, it's not a department head, so I would be fine. But yeah, it's an issue that we really want to take up at another time.
Yeah, given that there's no consensus on it, I guess maybe we put it on.
You probably noticed it.
There's one thing that I have on the agenda that will address some of this discussion a little bit later.
Motion.
You said yay, you said yay, and then I said yay.
Yay.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Welcome to the club.
Thank you.
Congratulations. The second item I have is another employee hire. Kate Schimmel is here. She is applied for the position of Human Services Director. She has great experience. She actually is an RN She's worked in public health, federal government health clinics, corporate health and welfare, and wellness. A great personality. We think that she will do well, especially with kind of developing this position since it is a new position. So I'm hoping that you will write that as well.
Well, I had the opportunity, and I consider it a unique opportunity to sit in on the interview process, and there were 4 candidates, and she was head and shoulders above the other. I think we're really lucky to have her, and so with that, I'd like to make a motion to hiring. Favor?
Discussion?
Sure.
What are the particulars? Because it was 75,000. How many hours, what's the pay structure going to be?
I hope that was in the memo,
It was
but
In the memo,
But
yeah,
there-
15 to 20 hours a week, $26 to $30 an hour with no benefits afforded.
She
And
suggested
she
there.
suggested 30 an hour.
So, especially because the fiscal year has already started and because we're starting out as a part-time position, it's not going to take the whole 75, although the 75 encompasses not only salary, but also to get this position up and running because it is new. She needs a computer, she needs a desk, she needs a printer, all those kinds of things that go along with establishing.
Excellent.
So we will probably be returning some of that 75 to the office.
With that, how do you vote?
Nothing personally against the young lady. She's very nice, but nay.
Okay, no offense to her, that I abstain. As I've already made it clear that it's not in the town's best interest.
I vote yay.
Yes.
Yes.
Motion carried. Welcome.
Last thing I have is request for authorization for the town to sign an agreement with Rhode Island Resource Recovery, the landfill corporation, as it's known to most. It's a typical agreement that we sign once every 3 years.
So moved.
Discussion, it has a tipping rate gone up?
Never go to, unfortunately.
One of the 60.
Okay, so with that, yay? Yay.
Yes.
Yes.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Thank you. And police chief's report.
Everybody, how are you? Folks, how are you? Good? All right. I have to point this out. This is actually, kudos to Scott Barber, our fire chief and our CPD aware of it by posting something on Facebook crediting Detective Bishop for the work he's done with their fire department. There's a tract of land behind Punchbowl Trail near Clearview Drive. A lot of people like to hike that area. It's actually owned by, I believe it's the Oak Hill Homeowners Association. Most of the association members are probably not even aware they're association members anymore because once they develop, it's got forgotten about. There was a fire there, about a half-acre of land, caught fire. And to President Trimmer's earlier statement about Allegheny, I cannot tell you, I have been all over the state for 37 years alone. Quality, professional, response time, and training, and commitment and dedication of your volunteer fire department and volunteer rescue or fire rescue, I guess, it's second to none. And they work seamlessly with one another. It's great teamwork. And I'm telling you, every time I go out on a call, I see it. It's refreshing. So they extinguished this fire rather quickly, about a half an acre. It was a 911 call somebody made. It sounded like a young person. Detective Bishop went out to assist the fire department. He examined the scene. He saw an exploded aerosol can, completely busted open, like it blew up. And there was a cigarette lighter. And I'm not going to tell you where these individuals were from because they were cooperative, they're teenagers. But the first thing Detective Bishop did was reached out to the school resource officer. Hey, give me an idea of who's not in school today. But before you could even get that response, he started to canvass the neighborhood with the fire department. Found two young people in a garage on this very nice street, lined with beautiful houses, and approached them and started engaging conversation. One of them said, "I called, I saw it." But, you know, self-preservation kicks in. And it doesn't matter how old you are. You could be 50, you could be 50. This particular instance, I think initially they were hoping to get away with, we called it because we saw it. But a lot of names have said, I see a lot of kids in this area, based on the aerosol can, they kind of use it as a flamethrower. And spray, light, and lit up a patch of grass on the pavement. At some point, that made its way to one of the students actually had posted it on Snapchat. Brian Taylor, on Road, who has a great relationship with the students, helped these over the last 3 or 5 years. He received information that one particular posted this thing. As soon as it kind of became public that there was a fire, they took it. Both students were remorseful. They ultimately confessed to it. Because it was this Oak Hill Association land, they didn't want to prosecute. Chief Barber didn't want to prosecute. However, both students have to do 20 hours of community service to the fire department, which I think is perfect. Right? They took appropriate action by calling in the area that was loaded with flammable material. They learned a valuable lesson and watched these people load trucks and watched the great education without even having a juvenile handbook. That's how it's.
Great if they join the fire department.
No. Secondly, I just want to say, again, going towards 138 with the houses, President Trimmer.
Yes.
And this involves the whole Valley Inn. We have seen an increase in the level of intoxication of noise. I'm not attributing that to legalization of marijuana. I just see people drinking more, taking more drugs, and it's a combination, it's kind of a buffet. The field sobriety test on these body-worn cameras, again, it's so compelling. You know, you get a defendant that looks like me, dressed in a suit and tie, 6 months down the road to a year, the actions on the paper don't match the person that you see. When you play a video of a person who is thick-tongued, admits to drinking some, usually they say couple of like cases or leave it. You see them struggling to maintain their balance and actually not able to walk heel to toe on the side of the road. And the discussion between the police, it's not adversarial. It is conversation. They're treated with dignity and respect. It's just fantastic. But the concern is impaired drivers. 3 p.m. On a Wednesday afternoon, I'm driving down the road, digesting lunch, and I see this vehicle in front of me. Normally when you see a drunk driver, somebody intoxicated, it's like trying to land a plane on an unlit runway, foggy, you know, it's real slow, meandering over the center line, you know, with a fog line. It's not real quick and jerky. They correct. This individual's car was going from the lane of travel, almost jumping over the center line into the opposite lane, coming back. It was like there was something wrong with the steering wheel, or the operator was having a seizure. Ended up, after 20 minutes of discussion with him, field sobriety test, he kept nodding out while we're talking to him. He also had all these kind of spastic movements. It wasn't a medical condition. We asked, he admitted that he'd taken an opiate, so he was about to go unconscious. While he's driving towards the Richmond Elementary School during his pickup drop-off at 3 p.m. So whole Valiums came out, and I'm telling you, a lot of them are young people just trying to cut their teeth, but they're EMTs. The way they treat the public, and the way they render aid is just, it's amazing to see. Kudos to them. Lastly, this is our annual super plunge for special. I bring this up because in this line of work, you see a lot of people at the good people make bad decisions, right? Good people have weak moments, vulnerability. It's traumatic for the officers, for the firefighters, for the records, for going out seeing these people dealing with this. The brain is a hard drive. It just constantly loads this stuff in. You learn how to kind of cope with it, but it can be unhealthy. Taking a lot of this on. Seeing people at their worst, then you have Special Olympics. I've been a volunteer for 36 years. And it's the best examples of humanity I've ever seen. It's civility, it's respect, compassion, championing, you know, and overcoming the odds to be the best. And to see this happen live, it restores your faith in human nature. So no athlete in Rhode Island pays to participate in Special Olympics. That's how it should be. Promoting tolerance and acceptance for people with intellectual disability. So this is our 10th year. I started this event in Rhode Island, and it looked good on paper, but it is painful. Because you start at 1 p.m. being up on a Saturday. You're diving head first into the ocean. Water temperatures are usually about 38 to 41 degrees this time. Chose March because it's cold. COVID kind of interrupted us a little bit because obviously people could find space, so we had to readjust our schedules. We took last year off. This is our first time back with a smaller team, but we're up to $108,000 right now, and it's really the commitment of the volunteers that are participating. 1 a.m., 2 a.m., 3 a.m. in the night, you're diving into the salty brine. I don't know why this happens every year. Darkest, coldest part of the night, the tide goes out. You feel like you're running a block over the shore. You completely submerge yourself. But the next day is really the celebration. That's when the athletes are there and they see and recognize that they're being celebrated. So I'll send out a link to Karen. I haven't put it on Facebook. Fundraising's been great. It's really about raising awareness.
I just said she wants.
I have watched him. I don't go in the water, but I'm there cheering him off every year.
She lets me practice in the koi pond.
It's good fun too.
It is a good size.
So
500 gallons.
we were talking about the ambulance corps, and when I first moved here, I moved here as clinical engineering director at Westerly Hospital. And the technician that I had was the nephew of the guy that ran the ambulance corps at the time. And so we provided free equipment service to all of the emergency equipment. They had the defibrillators and such that they carried on these ambulances just to help save taxpayers and people a little bit of money. And we did that until I left when the hospital went bankrupt, unfortunately.
A lot of those volunteers over there actually have to work second jobs when they work at the ambulance companies. They bring the skill set back.
Thank you.
Good luck. My heart's with you. I'm thinking of you. Yeah, 24 times.
So we have the scheduling workshop. Discuss what it is on the.
She can do it, Danny.
Yeah. She was talking about doing it at least after the first budget workshop. So I'm just looking at the calendar, seeing that we have a 5 o'clock budget workshop on April 10th. I suspect it won't go super long. And I'm wondering if we should schedule it for right after that.
Sure.
We understand that.
Yeah. Well, budget workshops at 5, so
10th is tentative.
for the budget workshop?
It was tentative if we needed it for
Right.
5, so
Yeah.
just as a.
Well, so Erin won't need to post the agenda for the budget workshop until Thursday at 5, and we will know how much time we need based on how late, right, how much we get done after the first workshop. So it'll, if you guys are okay with it being a little bit flexible.
Just post it there and go from the next.
Thoroughly.
I think we scheduled the 10th as need,
There
but
have
I'm
been
sure we
times when
could.
had a meeting
Yeah.
the second budget
But we could,
workshop, but
I mean,
you know, yes.
Fifth.
No. The first budget workshop is the 5th at 5 before the council meeting at 6, because we moved the meeting into the Terre Haute referendum on.
When will we get copies of the proposed budget?
I will ask Laura. I think she's ready. It's actually looked on the website right now, so we will print those.
Obviously, you'll click the right place, but I didn't find it.
It's on the finance page down towards the bottom. There's a bunch of links. But I will send it directly to you and it's definitely one of those things that you want hard copies. So if you want to come pick up copies, we're happy to print them out.
That being said, we move on to section H, appointments and resignations. Item 1, the request for appointment to the Conservation Commission, 1 member with term expiring January 31st, 2024. The applicant is Dave A. Lally. Dave, would you like to come up and speak briefly about why you want to be on the commission and what you hope to bring to it?
Hello, I'm David Lally. I live in 42 Tug Hole Road in Richmond. And I was interested in the Conservation Commission. A month or so ago, I spoke with the director, James Turek. He gave me some ideas on what the responsibilities of being on the commission were. One of them is to review environmental assessment of development of residential or commercial or even a grant for environmental impact. And the second is to apply for grants for certain programs like trails, upkeep of trails in the town, and even the development of bees and pollination type of things. And so those things are all interesting to me. I have a scientific background. I've worked for years in research and technology, and I hope to apply my scientific methods to that commission. Looking forward to serving on.
Motion to Lally, the Conservation Commission with term expiring January 31st, 2020.
Second. Okay, any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Hi.
Aye. Thank you. Welcome.
Good luck, Dave.
Okay, the next item is H2, the request for appointment to the Tax Assessment Board of Review for 1 member with a term expiring December 31st, 2025. The applicant is Jeffrey Winters Noble. Jeffrey, if you could come on.
Hi, Jeff Noble. I live in Richmond. I'm sorry for the formal part. I thought it was for the background check. You, my whole name. Just thought I could help out with the Tax Assessment Review Board. I've lived in several towns in several states. Lived overseas too for a little bit. My background, I'm a pilot, but also my degree is in economics. So I have a rudimentary understanding of markets, and also I've been to the town specifically to ask how the taxes are assessed and how they're applied. It's an educational experience for me, and I hope that I can, spread the word about how taxes are applied and hopefully help the residents with their assessments.
Motion to approve Jeff Noble to the Tax Assessment Board of Review with term expiring December 31st, 2025.
Second. Any discussion?
I like how you both went out and looked into the commissions before you joined them, whether through the town itself or reaching out to a chair. That's awesome.
I've seen some of your comments on Facebook and social media before, but other than that, I don't know you very well. So it's we're dealing with a lot of personal and private information, so I hope we can handle that accordingly.
Well, to give you some confidence in that, I'm a retired member of the Rhode Island Air National Guard. I was in the active duty Air Force for 13 years before joining them for 7. I hold top secret clearance with them. So, dealt with personal information. I've been a supervisor, both in the deployed and home environment, having to deal with like HIPAA issues and disciplinary actions. So, well aware of what we're doing. My father was also an attorney, so kind of aware of the sensitivity of information. Yes, I am a advocate for the public school system just because I'm a product of that, and having gone to the Air Force Academy and seen what well-funded school systems do versus where I came from, tell you that that is why I'm so active Plus, my children go to school. Yes, my wife's a teacher. She just started, but my youngest daughter wouldn't speak if it wasn't for public education. So that's really my passion, is drive children.
My youngest daughter also had special needs and went through the Cherokee system. I was very happy with them. Any other questions or comments or questions from users?
No problem.
So, we go voting now?
Yes.
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 Staying.
Staying.
Okay.
I'm just fine.
Okay, the next is licenses. And we have approval of the kennel license for Owl House Pet Lodge located at 204 Old Mountain Road. Is the applicant here?
It is a renewal, so
Okay,
I
so
apologize, it wasn't
I
noted.
have had the pleasure of using this.
Motion's on the floor.
Yeah.
I made the motion to approve, and we can discuss it.
Okay.
Second, did you have a second? I'll second.
Okay. So now the discussion, I will have to abstain from this because I have used this service before.
I
So,
also have to sustain because I'm still using them.
okay. So, that being said, how do you vote?
Yes.
Just for course of discussion wasn't over yet. Attorney Ellsworth, do you see a problem just because of bringing the dogs to this to abstain, or?
Yeah, I can't really answer that question off the top of my head. On the surface, it doesn't seem that there would be, but I've always, every time I've said that, I've always regretted it later. So I don't want to give you a quick, I always say when you're not sure to contact the ethics commission and find out from them. We can't do that right now because we're in the middle of a vote. I would say as long as there are 3 voting members, we won't have to worry about it. But if you're going to abstain too, then we would have to continue research.
Well, I don't.
Do you have a dog?
No. I'm curious because, they get billed and pay by check or credit card. It's curious.
Yeah, well, that's not the only criterion, but I just don't know.
I wanted to be safe. I didn't want one of the social media outlets because
yeah,
it is. So again, we have are you voting yay or nay?
Voting for it.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Okay. Unfinished business. Discussion and authorization to hire a part-time electrical inspector. Okay, and we had, last meeting, we had talked about Jeff. And we had, as part of the packet, his resume and such. And as a person who's an electrical, not in here? I thought it was.
No, there was no hyperlink.
Within the last,
I'll ask the question again. There are a list of applicants that are being presented to town council. No.
No, I wasn't expecting to do that. I thought this was council motion.
so 4 applicants. And we sent the SMAs for the 4 applicants. I believe I have them here with me. Jeff's resume really did stand out as being was amazing.
I can speak as an electrical professional here that his resume did truly stand out as substantially superior to the others. You know, the kind of work that he does, and if we were to ever have a more complex situation where we needed to do electrical inspections, Jeff would be able to do those inspections, whereas there's a possibility that the other applicants would need to call in a person with experience.
My question is very simple. Jeff is here. Jeff, have you done municipal inspections? Eight inspections?
Correct.
Okay.
Applicant has 3 open unresolved zoning violations. We also all at the last meeting received an extremely disrespectful and unprofessional response from the onset of the job. And I think that's going to create, I don't know another word for toxic, but a toxic environment when we're right into in that manner. And I know for a fact that if I were to ever send an email like we received to somebody I didn't get a job for, they would not be banging my door down to get it, to hire me. So on top of the zoning violations, disrespectful response, I'm just getting forward with this. I just don't think that's good for the town.
Jeff, do you have something you wanted to say? Yes, please.
Answer your question. To respond to the zoning violation that's spoken of, there were calls made about the property letting, and the building official had come out and reviewed them. It said that he did not see the person that called. He would give them a call back and tell them that what was here previous is here now. And that was the end of it. That'll be one that I'm aware of. Second one, you sure can.
I don't believe that there are any outstanding zoning violations. If there were, if a violation letter was sent, but nothing was done about it, it means that the matter was dropped administratively. And I think that was the case with all of them.
I was told otherwise.
All right.
By who and when.
Yeah.
By Karen.
They told me they were still
Right.
outstanding.
So it sounds
I don't think that, I don't think that's, I don't think Tony knows. Based on my own knowledge, I would not think it was a problem.
Okay. That's what.
Just saying I'm against it or for you. You on any work in your town?
For the municipality?
No, not for the municipality, for like
Residents?
homeowners and other like businesses.
I have done many jobs for many different businesses and residents.
Now is the county. He becomes the electrical inspector. He's done jobs in the town. He now have to, would he be able to inspect his own?
No.
So if that
Jeff
happens.
were going to, and I don't know if he is going to continue to do work in Richmond. If he did, you would have to hire a deputy inspector to inspect his work, but he may intend not to do it.
So here's the Rhode Island State Building Code law about building officials and electrical inspectors and plumbing inspectors and so forth. No full-time inspector shall be able to perform work in the department. Now, further elaborate on that. You're right. If I was to do work, then you would ask for either the state or nearby municipality to come by and work.
One question.
Yeah.
The answer, thank you.
And it would probably be another town in case.
Okay. The discussion. With that, I make a motion. Yes. Part-time electrician. Vision.
Second. Discussion on the motion. There's a dollar amount mentioned. He cleared in email he'd be willing to take much lower rate, so I'd like to suggest we add $20 an hour to the motion.
This is the rate that we've been paying our previous electrical inspector.
I'm not sure. They said he'd go less than 25 in his email.
I don't think we should ask them to go less.
This would save us some money.
Yeah.
I mean, he said he'd do it.
Yeah, I don't think we should take them up on it.
Well, I still in the conversation.
Yes, you certainly are. You're welcome to speak.
Oh, okay. What was the job listed as publicly in the paper?
I don't recall.
Someone here should, right?
1 second, I'll
I
look
think
it
it's
up.
$30 and something.
It was 30, 40. Yeah, 30, 40.
So, as you know, I've well stated what I stated and I stand by it. My thinking was, if I was offered the position, I still would honor the elected inspector.
I think what Jeff, it just seems like this issue here, there seems to be a lot of confusion with one council person. You know what I mean? And I find that very distinct.
Please address your comments about a fellow counselor to the president of the council. That's not public discussion.
I find it very, very discerning to, very troubling to see that somebody, is coming before us with erroneous information and putting, you know, this applicant, you know what I mean, in a very, bad light, which I don't appreciate.
Well, my only concern was the letter was a little bit rough, but stand by my motion to Jeff Valancourt, electrical inspector, at the rate it was.
Second.
So that being said, how do you vote?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Abstain.
No.
Okay, well, welcome aboard, Jeff.
Thank you, and I appreciate it.
Okay. Next is unfinished business is discussion and consideration of the tri-town collaboration with Hopkinton and Charlestown. Put on by Councilor Cosanti. I'm sorry.
2 and 3, I'm gonna put off to the next agenda. Get a big agenda here, and I've got a plate I gotta get.
I really appreciate it if we can just get this out of the way, because a lot of people are looking to have some kind of
Well,
resolution
that's,
for this.
I appreciate that, but that's not up to you. I would like
Mr.
to
President,
push this off to
Can
the
we
next agenda.
discuss it?
We should vote on putting it
Yeah.
on. So
Yes.
I'd like to put a motion to decline the request to form a tri-town collaboration as presented.
Second.
Now we can open discussion. We've also all the materials that were provided today, the materials that have been presented. We keep saying we're gonna get it, we're gonna get it. We got it in front of us now. I'd like to move on there. I'm not gonna go through each item that was listed on those fact statements and public statements individually, but I'm not in favor of forming this group. That's all.
Well, just by, you know, Mr. President, just by what our representative Megan Carter said, that voices, numbers really play big on the General Assembly. And she did acknowledge that, you know what I mean? It was, from what I gathered, going in the right direction and bringing them into the loop, which, like I said to her, we will eventually do. This was just at a stage that we're looking into it. Just like when she starts her bills, and she acknowledged that she doesn't get together with everybody in the General Assembly to say, guess what, guys, I'm going to start looking into drafting this bill. No, she does it with her attorneys. She drafts the bills, and then she brings it to other members at that point to garnish support. And that's when other people sign on to the bills. Okay, so we basically did the same thing. We got a consensus with other council members. We got a consensus at the omnibus meeting, and they all concurred with it. And, you know, Mr. President, the same counselor that just voted, you know, no, she said, why don't you come with a mission statement? A mission statement would be putting the cart before the horse. One point you're saying that I did this without your approval, but then you asked me to come and have a mission statement. The mission statement doesn't come till after we form a group. So it's like, in one sense, you're saying I did something wrong, and then in the next sense, you're saying, well, why don't we have a mission statement? Mission statement occurs when you form the group, and then the group forms the mission statement. So you're not even giving me the opportunity, all right, to get to that point where you had a problem with that the first time. So I would like to form the group so that way we can get on with our mission and form a mission statement, bring the 3 other town councils into it and school committee members for the purpose of going after the mandates that are unfunded.
So Charlestown denied entering into the operation. And I understand where you want to go with the collaboration, and I appreciate it. I think that if it's done in a manner that is a little bit more open, because the first conversation that was had was I spoke to officials in Charlestown, and I spoke to officials in Hopkinton, and when they were reached out to, they said they had no knowledge of it. That kind of put a sour taste in a lot of people's mouths. I'm for having a group of people, and I tried to do it years ago, and unfortunately it fell apart. But having a conversation with Charlestown and with Hopkinton can be had as long as it's here out in the open, so that every single person, public included, is part of the conversation. We don't need a mission statement. We already know what it is that we would like to do. We want the city to be put a little more, money in the pot for us system. So work with Megan Cotter and get her, utilize her instead of us trying to do it here. She's already at the State House. Talk with her, find out what the next steps are, and then take it from that point. But doing it the way that it was started put a lot of people at odds because it wasn't done out in the open, and that's the biggest problem. I don't have a problem with the idea. I think it's fantastic. I would love to see the school committee and the town committees, the town council members, every single person have the opportunity to be able to speak. But to do it at your house, or to do it at a pizza place or whatever, that's not open. That's not transparent. I would love to see it being open. To go forward with Megan Cotter and see what the next steps could possibly be, because then it could flourish, and then you would have the power from the top coming down and say, look, Megan Cotter's working with us, and Elaine Morgan is working with us, and then we have all these other people that we can work with. The council members on New Shore, they've been involved. That's the way that it should be done, and that's the way that I would support it. I'm not going to support the way that it was done.
Council President?
I have comments on this as well, and I feel too that it wasn't above board. It wasn't meant to be nefarious, but it gave all the appearances of it. We have an existing structure. We need to use the existing structure. We work with the council. I'm sure we all agree. I'm sure all 5 of us here agree that we need to do something about 5 unfunded mandates, etc. I'm sure that all 5 of the council, in fact, I know that all 5 of the council members in Charlestown feel the same way. And I'm sure that all 5 of the council members in Hopkinton feel the same way. So we need to use the existing structure, create something using and involving the existing structure, following Open Meetings Acts, etc., and not look for a bypass.
Well, what would you recommend?
I just said it.
Well, if we can't all be, then
I have a recommendation. So if we see something that we support or don't support, like all these bills that Mecca mentioned this evening, put it on the agenda. Say, I'd like to send a resolution in support of this, and I'd like to send it to the school committee, and I'd like to send it to the neighboring towns or other regional districts or whatever may or may not apply. And then that council can get together after seeing our resolution and say, no, that's a really cool idea. That's exactly what happened in Exeter. That's exactly how we had a resolution regarding the school that trickled down from the school committee. I don't remember off the top of my head, but we have, as a council, have already done this. We already currently are doing this. And I think that we as a council need to learn to work together before we start getting other people into it, because right now that's just not happening. And I want to work together. I want to work with everybody, but we need to be here and be present and work together first. Thank you.
In response to that, Council, Mr. President.
Yeah.
Of course, you know what I mean, when there's a line drawn in the sand between difference of ideologies, you're going to find, no matter what is done, that opposite ideology is always going to find something wrong with what you do. Okay. Now, you're saying about transparency. We had a very social, nice function at Dragon Palace. There is nothing, I mean, hidden about that in Dragon Palace. Okay. So the idea that we were trying to hide something is totally, I mean, ludicrous.
Nobody is saying that you were trying to hide anything. It just gave all appearances of not looking good.
Well, you know, appearances are not, they're always, I mean, where ideas start and you get a consensus. And that's all it was. The consensus was, it was a good idea at the omnibus meeting. And then I got to know some of these folks and I say, let's get together and here's a sheet that I did up. They didn't put together any sheet, I did. And it was a sheet where at that point we could get some ideas and we write it down. There were spaces and you saw it. All right, Counselor. All right, that there were spaces that they could put their ideas, all right, and their concerns and whatnot. And at the end of those couple of little get-togethers, then we said, okay, this holds some weight. Let's go back to our full councils now and get their approval. So nothing was done fallaciously about this. But anybody could always say the perception of something wasn't quite right when the line is drawn in the sand.
I don't think it's a line drawn in the sand. I myself saw it as something that wasn't done the right way. I saw it ignoring the open. You can chuckle all you want, but
you know, we went to the Attorney General's office and we already got the okay that we could do that.
Mark and I can sit and have lunch, and we're not violating any open meeting violations.
Well, go ahead. Whatever you want to talk about, talk about. And if you guys brainstorm, you got a great idea and you want to bring it back to the council, go right ahead. But I'm not going to sit here and say, well, Richard, geez, you and Mark were conspiring. You should have had this discussion with a full council. But if you and Mark have a coffee and you bring an idea forward, all right,
the point is, Mike, is that
what's the point?
I'm going to get to it.
Go ahead.
The point is that you didn't bring anything to the council.
Still don't have anything.
And what was brought after the fact. There was 2 meetings that no council member nor other town council members knew about. At all.
I didn't know about it because I was there.
We knew about it. We didn't know about it. The public didn't know about it.
Can I ask you something, Richard? Would you have come? I invited you and I posed the same question.
My first question would have been,
you would not have come.
Don't ever put a word in my mouth because you don't know what I'm going to say.
You wouldn't have.
My first words out of my mouth would have been, are there any other council members there? And if you would have said no, and I would have said, all right, well, I'll sit down and have a cup of coffee with you. But if you said, well, Helen's going to be there, then I would say, I'm sorry, but that would be an open meeting violation and I can't attend because I've been in front of the ethics board and we're not going there again.
I think that's one of the issues, trying to.
Ethics board.
Trying to move forward.
Again, but the point is that if you would have brought it here to the council first, say, hey, we have an idea and this is what we would like to do. And you put it in front of all 5 of us, then all five of us would say,
The
you know what,
idea
that's a
was-
great, that's a good idea.
The idea,
Let's elaborate
the
on that.
idea was formulated when I got together with other council people to hear what they had to say. And then I brought that back to the council. Sharon Davis came and she gave you a list of
Sharon
three
Davis
items.
only came last month.
Okay, so I want to,
So
at
let's
this
move
point,
on.
I want to rope this in. I just want to say one thing, that Sharon Davis came and I didn't even know she was coming. But what was it you?
What I was gonna say is I would like to maybe help everybody understand is the formation of the wellness committee, I believe, is a great example of the last council did, how they came together, they agreed on a committee, they have members, they vetted members together, and I just think that that's a great way to create a new subcommittee, and that's essentially what this would be, a new subcommittee. Additionally, we have information in front of us tonight that was mentioned by, I don't remember who, but somebody mentioned we have information tonight, and I don't mind saying publicly that the reason we have that is because I had to do an APRA with Hopkinton. And so for an own council member to have to do that is to me part of the problem. I would have loved to have mirrored what the prior council had done with the clubs committee with new ideas.
Well,
But I think we have all
you gotta-
vetted this enough and said everything. So if you'd like to move
You gotta
forward,
understand,
let's-
council, that Hopkinton had their meeting the day before we did. They discussed it and they approved it. And then that's why Sharon Davis came at our meeting the very next day for our council to look at the same paperwork, get the same discussion as occurred at her council. None of her council really basically said like fallaciously, you did something underhanded, this, that, and the other thing. So I don't, to be honest with you, I don't know how you can make this up in your head. I'm really.
Okay, well, so I have a comment to make about all of this. There is a reason why we have these ridiculously laborious rules to follow and procedures to follow and so on. And it's so that everybody stays involved, knows what's going on, makes informed decisions and so on. This situation wasn't done that way. And so I don't care if the commission meets 100 more times. I personally, as town council president, and I personally, as one of the 5 town council members, can't say, hey, I'm gonna, underwrite this council, give the endorsement of the town council to this group. And that's where I stand on it.
I'd like to just make a comment that everybody has talked about, we have all these unfunded mandates. And everybody says we should do something about it.
Well,
And
as a
nobody's
council,
done anything about it.
Put it on the agenda.
I should
Let's-
say, nobody but Mike has done anything about it.
Okay, well, let's put these things on the agenda and as a council, work on it. Not as
When you
a
put it
sub.
on, and when you put it on top of the table and everybody can see it, then we can talk about it. And that's what I would go forward with. And there's a motion.
Okay. So at this point, I don't remember what the motion.
I'll repeat my motion, David. My motion, down. Motion to decline the request to form a tri-town collaboration.
I seconded that. And so we're gonna vote. How do you vote?
It's not even worth voting. You
Just
people do
vote
what you
nay.
want.
Just vote nay.
You people do what you want.
Just do vote nay. I'll vote nay.
Stupid.
Okay, I vote yay.
Yes.
Yes.
I'm sorry. I need to move. I'm sorry, Councilor Collins, are you abstaining or voting nay? I need something for the record.
Voting not to vote.
That will be a nay.
And you want to just skip the economic development?
Because it's
discussion
played
for now.
into what they were going to present to the EDC.
So I'll make a motion to continue Councilor Calasante's economic priorities and development discussion. Do I have a second?
I feel like we kind of already did this when Councilor Sheehan brought it up to us. We all talked about our priorities, which included economic development. We're kind of kicking the can down the road here.
But he put it on, it's an agenda item, so,
It's gonna be our third.
all right, but it's an agenda item, so we can put it down the road. So how do you vote?
Was ready tonight.
Okay. That's continued on, and another section of new business under item K. Number 2, I wanted to discuss the way our town council interacts with the town hall staff. It's not an individual thing, but we as a council need to agree on, we can't just go and assign a job to somebody or tell somebody they need to do something differently or tell something that one individual can't say this should be your new responsibility or what have you. It is up to the council as a whole to put it on the agenda, to discuss it, to vote on it, to pass it, for the town council president go and talk to the town administrator and the town administrator to administrate it down to the staff. It's not up to us. It creates a threatening work environment at times. It's disruptive when somebody's working on something that they've been assigned and they're trying to complete it. And I just feel that we should follow the way the charter insists that or the charter spells out how we should work with the town employees. And so I wanted to discuss it. I didn't want to vote it on it. I didn't want to argue about it. It's here, it's in writing. And I forgot who came up earlier and said that some of our decisions disrupted. But it all kind of ties in that these are the people, we are simply 2-year stewards of the town. These people run the town. These people do all the work in the town and they do a great job. They're overworked, they're asked to go here and go there and do this and do that. Things have really, really changed since 2016 when I was on the council. There's a lot more being requested of all of the town employees. I don't want to lose anyone. I think I've pretty much in 2 terms plus this term, I've dealt with everyone in town hall. I think they do a fantastic job. We as a council need to decide what a responsibility change would be. We as a council need to decide what resumes come forward or who needs to do this or what. It isn't up to an individual council. It's great that councilors go and ask questions. I ask Sean questions and the 2 Karen's questions almost every day, all the time. But asking questions and delegating authority and responsibility are 2 different things. And I just ask that we follow the charter, we work together. I said one of my goals as a council president was to get our council to work together. And that's part of it. We don't need shortcuts. We need to do it the way it's spelled out to do. With that, I ask for any council comments.
I have a few things to say.
Sure.
One is every time that I have been in to see a member of the town government, I have a typed list of the things I intend to cover. Second, this is the town charter. It says the town council shall have the authority to appoint and remove all town employees and department heads, or remove a town administrator, which we know that already. Enact, amend, and repeal ordinances to protect peace, health, safety, comfort, and welfare, and to protect the natural environment and to manage the property, affairs, and government of the town without limitations. So when I go and talk to any department person, I have a list of questions. I think it's reasonable for me to ask any question I want.
Absolutely.
And I might say to them what I think about it. And I don't think that that's appropriate.
No, it's not, but delegating authority by an
Did
individual
I
town.
delegate authority to somebody?
I never said anyone did.
Well,
I never mentioned a single
You
name.
didn't mention anyone's name, but as far as I'm concerned, trying to do a good job.
Yeah, and you do an
I'm
excellent
trying
job. I
to
think you
talk to
research well.
everybody to get things in order. So
I got a comment too, Mr. President.
Sure.
Again, being newly elected, trying to get up to speed. wondering why certain things were voted against, U-Haul, Blue Wave Solar. So I go into Karen Pinch, and I think Aaron and Karen, because before there weren't the town manager and the clerk. So I said, who do I go to ask these questions? All right. So then you clarified, a few things, and so did Aaron. Okay. So then I go into your office and I say, hey, look, economic development, multiple things that got nixed in this town. And one of them was Blue Wave Solar. And I asked you, how come? You said, well, the prior council, it was only Nell and Lauren Latoya that voted to approve it. The other three council members said no. And then you stated, well, it was like $225,000, all right, to put on top of a rock where there's no trees and stuff that would have to be cut. And I said, well, geez, I said, do you think they'd still be interested? And he says, well, I can reach out to them. And I said, fine. Whenever I've gone into your office, I've always stated to you, if there's any information that I want, always make sure you CC it to all the other council people and whatnot. Now, it's my responsibility, all right, to go in and talk with you from time to time, to ask you certain things. And if certain people on the council are getting that feeling that some people are being dictatorial and demanding that things have to be done, then, you know what I mean, we just have to go back to the town charter, because everybody's trying to dodge that we're the hire and firing agents, and nobody has the authority to send out a letter of denial. But they'll scoot around that and say, well, no, the town, the way it's been working for years, we haven't done that. Well, then if you want to follow the town charter, then follow it 100%, everybody, okay? You can't pick and choose, all right? So if you want to follow the town charter, let's follow the town charter. I asked Karen, Solicitor Ellsworth, if it was inappropriate for any council person to go into a department head's office and inquire about a certain issue. And she says, absolutely not. And I talked to another attorney who I have on retainer, and they said, that is your job to do that. You can't go in there and sit down with somebody and say, hey, look, my cousin Vinny over here wants the job to put in the solar field. Make sure you vote okay. That is like, everybody, come on, you can't do that. But that's not what we're saying. Nobody, I think, has ever done that. So let's get on, and we want to discuss, and we want to understand the town charter. Let's everybody read it back to back 3 more times, so that way then we can fully understand it and not pick and choose what we want.
Okay, so I get to respond now. I wasn't talking about asking questions. I wasn't talking about discussing anything. I made it very clear that it was going in and assigning a town employee something. Now, it says the council. You read the ordinance. It says the council has the right to do X, Y, and Z, hire and fire, blah, 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 blah. It doesn't say an individual. So if an individual councilor would like resumes on every employee that comes to town, the individual councilor needs to make it a agenda item. The town council needs to discuss it and vote on it. That's spelled right out, and you even said so by reading what you read.
No, that's not what it says in the town charter.
Everyone gets an
Go ahead.
opportunity before somebody gets it. There was also a statement made, Mr. President, that another counselor had asked Karen Finch to make a phone call. To me, that crosses line into direction. As a new counselor, I know it can be a lot to learn, what other councils have done. But it is all public record. So I did take some, and I was going to bring this up during the economic priorities conversation, so I'm back up my notes there. But I did take some initiatives to have a Zoom call with GFI. It was very just introductory. Hey, I'm Sam, new town counselor. What's going on? And I just think that for me to ask Karen to do that, to reach out to GFI, would be crossing the line of directing her into doing something. So I think that might help with a very clear distinction of really what we're going for here. And I'll keep my thoughts to myself about the charter.
Yeah, the charter.
I mean, the charter, yeah. Next unelected
Right.
candidate. I'll keep my thoughts to myself. That's picking and choosing.
Well, I think that being a counselor, you go into the town hall and you have to have the utmost respect for the people who are working there, and not to make them feel uneasy in any way, shape, or form. You are a servant. You're a public servant. They are the employees of the town. We're there to support them, to lift them up, to encourage them to find ways to make their job easier, better, not to make it a toxic environment, not to feel uneasy, not to make them, when someone was walking the door, put their head down and start typing and pick up the phone, get you somebody on the phone and somebody after them. You're there to help them do their job, tell them to or what to do and how to do it. So I think that's really the crux of the conversation, is be respectful for the people that work in the town hall, because we don't. None of us do. They do. And that's my piece. And don't make it toxic.
As far as I'm concerned, for myself, I've always felt respect for the people in the town hall. One of the things that I did not understand is that planning department and the administrator did not have any role in economic development. I thought they did, so that was definitely a learning piece and would have influenced some conversations I had with them.
Raise your hand or something.
I'll add on to your comment now. The town planner and the town administrator have absolutely nothing to do with private ownership and development of that entity. That would literally be like someone coming out to my property saying, I'm going to build a shed over there. And then other people harping on it going, yeah, that's a great idea. The whole entire Charitable Plaza is owned by Capstone, which is a subset or whatever entity of Stop and Shop, which is a global company. They own that entire piece of land. We have nothing to do with anything that they do on that property. The only thing that we can do on that property is try to make any progress for any building or any entity that would like to do anything there, make it easy for them on Sean's part, planning part, zoning part, to make it easy for them to develop on that piece of property. The town administrator has nothing to do with that piece of land, nor does Sean, or does anybody in this building. It's owned by a separate company, a completely separate entity. We have nothing to do with it. So that needs to literally be out there, and that discussion needs to end.
I'm not expecting eminent domain, but when I went and did talk to Sean about having a meeting with the people at Capstone, I was not aware that they had some things in the works. So what I understand today is I did not talk to anybody. I should have just gone over there and had a conversation about what they like to do for have in mind development, because that gas station that's an eyesore.
Get trim pieces falling off and landing on the ground.
So,
and the thing is too, I've talked to plenty of business people. I've talked to a lot of the big landowners, and Richmond has a reputation of not being business friendly. So they cut back and curtailed and constricted on what they wanted to do. So now all of a sudden they hear economic development. We want to make Richmond business friendly. We're open for business. Now it's sparking some interest in them. Now they start resurrecting some projects. They will start to resurrect some projects that will be bigger than they would have originally done, because they know now that Richmond is going to be a little more on board with them and getting some more tax revenue going. And you're talking about just the areas that are already zoned right in those.
This is going to be a long meeting, and I wanted to really end because we're on economic development. I want to reel it back to what originally sparked my discussion. One of the things that sparked my discussion is you wanted resumes on town employees, anybody who applied for a job, because we're the hiring and firing body and you wanted those resumes. So what you should have done is you should have put it as an agenda item. We should have voted on it. And then we should have said, okay, Karen, we voted 4-5, 4-1 or whatever to put the agenda item. I mean, I'm losing my.
Well, if I could,
Resumes on the
there's so
agenda.
much more to it than just give me the resume. Like I have thoughts and ideas about that as well, and I sent them to Karen. It would be great if I could share that with other counselors. So maybe I'll then.
But if it needs to be an agenda item, it needs to be voted on by the council, because the charter says the council has the power to hire and fire. It doesn't say a councilor does. The council has the power to change job descriptions, etc., not an individual councilor.
If we are supposed to, now I'll put it on the agenda for next time. The charter says we are and remove all employees. So I agree with you, Samantha. If we look at the resumes, we send back our recommendations. Yeah.
But no, that's the same part. Get into the nitty gritty on that when it's properly noticed.
I think that's the way it should be. I think the council should be privy to all the applicants' applications and resumes so we can take a look at it and then take into consideration the department head's recommendations.
So my recommendation and the charter states that we put it on the agenda and we sit down as a group of 5 and we see if we agree.
I mean, we're gonna overcome the.
Yeah, we're going to overrule the charter. Well,
No, we're gonna have a discussion about what we want to do
No,
procedurally. That's what we're talking about. Like, I just don't understand how.
it should have been done that way right from the very beginning, and it hasn't been. The way the town hall has been run, all right, for the last 10, 15 years, that's not the way it should have been done.
That's an opinion, but it's an
not an
opinion that
opinion. I'm
needs to
going by
go
the
on
charter.
It needs to go on the agenda.
You're
and be
splitting hairs,
discussed.
not me. I'm reading the charter.
If we're gonna change procedure in town hall, which is going to make somebody else's job different, that's a direction to a
It's
town
not,
employee.
you read
So
the
let us-
charter.
Let us, please.
You're trying to circumvent it.
Please stop with that.
You're trying to circumvent it.
So if we could just discuss any changes as a council, we here seem to agree, so let's move on.
Well, agenda item anyway.
Yes.
Okay.
President Sherman, were you taking public comment? Because I do have a
I-
hand raised.
I'm want to have public comment. I'll take comment from people in the room or people remote.
Nell, you should have permissions.
Thank you, Erin. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, sorry. Thank you, Mr. President. Great discussion. Great discussion. I'd like to say that the potential of, in regards to the charter that your article that you're speaking of, the potential of using one's position as an elected official, sorry, I have a little bit of a cold, to control, manipulate, influence, this must be forbidden, as you've clearly stated. I assume that the reasoning behind this article is, and certainly Solicitor Ellsworth could confirm, as she was and is the author of this document from its adoption in 2008 through all of the amendments that it's seen, even most recently, of course. The purpose of this is to prevent such inappropriate acts, and most importantly, to prevent corruption, to act in secret, to use one's position of power in creating a situation that benefits the elected official, his or her family, friends, coworkers, business associates, etc., right? This charter reference is harmonious with the Code of Ethics too, in my opinion. I believe, and I'm certain again, that Solicitor Ellsworth will correct me if I'm wrong. I believe that the spirit of Article 3, Section 7, it seeks to prevent all of these things that I've mentioned: control and manipulation and influence. I do not believe that Article 3, Section 7 prohibits a member of council to seek advice, get backstories, right? Ask for documentation, gather information, get history, whether it be in person, phone, or even via email. I believe the staff of Richmond are valuable resources who assist the elected officials in what should be the common goal of diligently representing taxpayers. I had open communications in my terms with administration, finance, clerk, DPW, police, and even the tax assessor's office, and I never requested information that wasn't pertinent to past, current, or potential town business. And I believe this is key. And lastly, I want to give an example. Last summer, I personally, in my capacity as president, reached out to the administrator to see if she could make a Meet the Candidates forum happen. Because as you recall, we've had that in years past, whether it be Zoom or at the Tech with the lovely luncheon and event that was held by the Elder Affairs Commission, right? So I'd asked Karen Pinch if we could make this happen. And her and I both agreed that since there was such a large pool of candidates, it would be great for voters to hear the various platforms and to maybe even meet with them. I did insist something of the administrator at that point, though, in my capacity as president. And if I'm wrong, then so be it. I insisted that she wasn't moderating. I insisted that I believed that to be inappropriate and that we needed to look out for another entity. And she found the League of Women Voters who were graciously capable of conducting that, as you all recall. Was this wrong of me? I don't know. If it was, I'd do it again. She kept me informed of potential hosts, and we agreed that video would be great. And if possible, to make that happen, and she made that happen. It wasn't for my benefit in one way, shape, or form, because clearly I didn't run. It was for the candidates and for the voters. So, was I in violation of the charter in doing that? In asking the administrator? Actually, I kind of directed her. She probably, I can't see you guys on video, but I think she's smiling. She did a great job with that. But I think it's what your intentions are. What are you trying to accomplish? Is it for the greater good, or So that's my 2 cents, and I appreciate the opportunity to say that. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Anyone from the, sir?
Mark Reynolds, I think it's important for the council to kind of take a step back and understand your role in town government. Your role in town government is not to manage the day-to-day operations of the town. That's why we have an administrator. That's why we have department heads. That's why we have employees. It's not the same. Your role is not the same as the manager of a business or even the owner of a small business who's involved in those day-to-day details. Your role is big picture. What can we do? Policy making. What can we do to bring business into town? What can we do to lessen regulations on businesses? Big picture policy. You're like a board of directors of a publicly held company. Those are the kinds of decisions you should be talking about, not who we should hire as a clerk in the planning department. You need to focus on big picture, rely on your employees and department heads. And when they come to you with a recommendation and say, we interviewed 6 people, we know the job, we met this person, and we think this is the best person for the job, you shouldn't be saying, oh, I want to see the other 6 resumes. That's not your role. Yes, you have the ultimate authority to say, yes, this person should be appointed. But you also need to rely on the expertise and the experience of the staff in this town hall. And that's what the prior speaker was talking about earlier tonight. When they do the work and they bring a recommendation to you, and basically you say, you know what, I want to look at the resumes myself because I don't think you know what we need in that position. That's demoralizing to them. And that's not supporting them. So I would encourage the council to focus on those big picture ideas, those big picture items. That's the role. Leave the day-to-day management to the very capable staff that we have here.
Sir?
Lally of Richmond. I respectfully disagree with the last speaker. I think it's very appropriate for the town council to review resumes of applicants who work for the town. The town council is elected representatives of the people of the town, and we should know who is working for the town, or we should review their application and even be involved in the interview process. The town council should, on behalf of the people of the town. I remember years ago when I worked on the Recreation Commission, we reviewed the applications and interviewed the applicants for the summer programs, the students that were applying for them. And we talked to each one in person. So I think it's very appropriate that the town council be in the interview process for all town employees.
Okay. Any further comment? If there are no further comments, I'd like to move on to communications, petitions, and proclamations.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion to enter executive session. Do I have to do, I don't have to read them all both in one? Agenda item or two? Like one motion? Yes. Okay. Participation in national opioid litigation settlement with CVS Walgreens and Walmart pursuant to RIGL 42-46-5A2 litigation and discussion of approval of employment contract with the town administrator pursuant to RIGL 42-46-5A1.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye. I'm gonna leave. Can I ask who that second one? Okay, thank you. And you're departing? Okay.
Give us a question mark.
Second. Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Motion to seal the minutes. Executive session. Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Aye. Aye. All right. We have to now re-enter.
No, we just.
We're in.
So motion to approve the proposed settlement with CVS Boston and Walmart.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Aye. Next motion.
Motion to approve the employment contract with the town administrator through 6/30/2021.
To,
Aye.
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 All right, everything's all set. Motion to
Adjourn.
Second.